So May writes, in the book, do you mention, if not more than mention, the experience of complicated grief, where the relationship has had difficulties that were not resolved at the time of the loss? There can be both intense grief and perhaps some relief.
Go ahead, Claire. It's your specialty.
Well, yeah, I think that's a great question, because I would say that's probably a really common experience, that the grief is multi-layered and complex, in that there may be intense grief and sadness, and there may be a whole lot of anger about injustices or how the relationship came to end, whether it was sudden and out of the blue and just felt so unfair, or whether there was a betrayal, or who knows. The people can arrive at their grief in so many different ways. And so that's why we separated out the chapters to look at fear, and to look at anger, and to look at grief and sadness and despair, and to look at the impact of past trauma and how that might be pressed by this current loss, to help people expand their view of the pain they're suffering right now, to try and learn and grow from it, rather than getting rigid and responding narrowly. And it's why we're looking at the way to process the grief is toggling back and forward between making space for emotional processing and getting on with the practical tasks of adjusting to your life without this person in it, and being able to move back and forward and greet yourself where you are on that journey, because it will be bumpy and up and down and back and forward. I don't know if that really answers the question. Catherine, you can probably
No, I think it's a great answer. And also, Claire, one of the great things you brought to the workbook, which might only be a partial add-on to an answer, is to May's question, is that the reader goes through exercises that highlights the relationship that they've just lost, the interactional pattern, each partner's steps in the dance, the positives that were a part of this relationship, the positive things the reader of the workbook contributed, as well as the pain that they experienced. And so we tried to take a very balanced view that there's a lot to heal from, and there's ideally some goodness too. We do address, maybe only briefly, unsafe relationships and how different that grief is. Mm. And so, that I know May's question was about complex grief, but then we have maybe additional complex grief called unsafe, getting out of an unsafe relationship, which wasn't the focus of this book at all, but we know is a factor in many relationships.
Yeah.